and communication expert, as well as political analyst Hezbon Owila. And for the very first time since the 2017 elections, one of the pioneers of the show, Jared Okello, Member of Parliament for Nyando in the County of Kisumu. Thanks, Mesh, for joining us. What have you been up to?
Well, you know, we've been running around trying to make the country function.
Right.
After two presidential elections in a row that had the potential to destroy our economic well-being.
Right.
And subsequently the handshake between the warring factions, we to do as a country.
Indeed.
Naturally, you'd expect that after every electoral cycle in any country in the world, you would expect the economy to dim. But fortunately for Kenya, even after the two presidential elections, our economy seems to be thriving. So that is very good news for us. And it is as a result of the tranquility, the peace that we enjoy as a nation, and the goodwill that we enjoy from the two presidential contenders, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right. I've been getting a lot of emails and tweets from viewers saying they want Jared Okello back on the show. They need to know that you have a lot more to do right now.
Yes,
thanks
for
thanks
Nyando constituency and for the Republic of Kenya.
Exactly. All right, let's begin with taking a look at some of the stories making headlines. Let's begin with very quickly, Dismas, taking a look at, we'll talk about this in more detail, but of course it's the big headline, the investigations and the police work following that attack on 14 Riverside Drive. What are your thoughts on how the authorities have dealt with this, even after dealing with Ground Zero itself?
Well, when you look at what happened at Dusit and you compare it to Watergate, you have to give President Kenyatta a pat on the back because there is a significant increase in the way we have responded. The communications by his government was fairly good. The response by the security agencies was solid.
Right.
For the first time, it was under one command. You recall that during Westgate, there were about 4 units taking instructions from 4 different personalities. So this one was fairly well coordinated. And I think we can only now work on the human intelligence to ensure that as a nation, we do not allow this kind of attacks to happen.
Yes.
But when you come to the media, initially there was a bit of a challenge that even before establishing facts, a number of journalists who are doing the live transmission started describing this as an act of terror before establishing the facts, which caused
Maybe they
to question.
established the facts before you.
Well, you know the facts are whether or not it's an act of terror or terrorism can only come from the authorities, can only come from the government. So before the government pronounces itself, as a journalist, you can only speculate. And with the advent of social media, journalists are requested to remain true. They must remain true to being objective and being accurate.
All right. We'll get into more detail in that. I want us to leave that alone. I will get into more detail in how the media covered it and exactly how the response was and how that has been. There's a story on the Daily Nation about Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga telling the nation that the handshake is very much intact and that it will cure the politics of this country. Mark Bichachi, what is your take on this?
I wrote an opinion this past Wednesday, and I said that Uhuru Kenyatta may be one of the most consequential presidents this country has ever seen, and simply because of the handshake. What I mean by that is the ramifications of the handshake go beyond the aspect of two individuals. This was evidenced by the fact that Uhuru Kenyatta, a sitting president of the Republic of Kenya, was able to visit certain areas of Nyanza that were hitherto quite hostile to presidents. And the ramifications of that handshake today, we can see that every politician of note, whether sitting in parliament or senate or having lost elections last year, has come out to say they support the handshake and they support President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, the reality of that is, whereas we may look at it as politics as usual, what is happening in the psyche of Kenyans is we are getting used to that. We're getting used to the fact that we don't have to fight each other. We're getting used to the fact that there is no difference between a Kikuyu and a Luo or a Kalenjin and a Maasai. And the more that stays that way, the more the politics of 2022 is going to change. Simply given the fact that those who tried to divide us hardly 3 weeks ago, the kind of putting the tail between their legs and closing ranks as quickly as possible that they did, tells you that it is no longer politics as usual. And that may be one of the hallmarks of the Uhuru legacy. Whether he wanted to or not, he is changing how politics is done in this country, and he's changing it for the better.
And Raila Odinga has obviously played a big part in that.
Absolutely. But Raila Odinga goes, you don't even need to mention about his impact in the Kenyan political landscape. From 1990, is there a newspaper that has been printed without his name on it, whether for good or bad? I think 365 times the last 30 years, you will find Raila Odinga's name in the paper. All right.
Husband, some people are a bit skeptical, saying that this is just papering over the cracks. Do you think this handshake is curing what really ails Kenyan politics?
Well, I think a lot of people who are looking at far much more reaching fundamental reforms in terms of curing the political system in this country are actually right to be skeptical, because at the perception level, we are seeing what the handshake has done, that in terms of helping Kenyans understand that there's no big difference between one tribe from another. There's no big difference between one leader from another. The key thing is the integrity of their character, their track record, and what they have to do for Kenyans. So for the people who are skeptical, and I fall in that category, and it's only that I'm a lot more optimistic in my skepticism, for the simple reason that I'm looking at Raila Odinga and his track record. He has been a reformist to the core, and I think he has ascended to where he is because of his reform agenda. And I think his place in the Kenyan politics is fossilized. So this handshake between him and President Uhuru Kenyatta, I think would mean a lot more to me and to Kenyans if it institutionalizes electoral reforms, so much so that when we go to vote, we know that the vote that we are casting will make a difference and will determine the kind of leaders that we have. So the people who are skeptical, if they're optimistic like I am, should wait for what the building bridges will do, and then after that, what are we going to have? Because from where I see it, the most important thing that we need is an electoral system that is just, that will tell us if you go to vote, your vote will count, that will not have some fishy things happening during the tallying process, that will give us a system that we'll believe in so much so that even after the election, we can verify. If people are making noise, we can verify that so-and-so actually won the election. Not a situation that we have today that we are not so clear, and of course, you remember the server was not open.
Mahesh, is the handshake intact, and is this the cure, the real cure for Kenyan politics, or will it just hold until 2022 and then we're back to factory settings?
Well, the skepticism that has been expressed by many, including those sitting in both lines, Jubilee and NASA coalition, is the reason as to why they kept it secret to themselves until the 9th of March. 5 meetings had been done before the 9th of March grand meeting. And it was so secretive that just the two of them were quite aware about what was going on. If we invited the political leaders, especially those in the NASA brigade, in the name of principles, to also have a participatory role in the talks preceding the handshake, then the resultant feature was that there wasn't going to be any handshake because of the same skepticism. And a similar would play out in Jubilee coalition. So they kept it to themselves until they unleashed it to the public, which was a shocker to everybody from the NASA point of view and the Jubilee point of view. The deputy president wasn't aware until he saw it on television, and the same with the other NASA principals. Now, they chose to move the country forward. Having come out of, a very difficult electoral process, which had violence and deaths registered in certain parts of this country. And of course, we bore the biggest brand in Kisumu and Migori. So we had to, as a country, do something. And it behoved the two leaders to reach out to each other, mend fences, in the best interest of the nation, to have this country go forward. Now, yesterday when they were meeting in Koru during the burial of Mr. Bruce Odhiambo, and may his soul rest in peace, they reiterated the same aspect, that this is not about 2022. This is about curing the divisive politics that we have always experienced as a nation, since time immemorial, actually.
So would you say it's working? Would you say those political leaders, especially who are skeptical, have come in line, like they've towed the line? Is it working? Because it can't be just about the two of them.
Yes, the two leaders, President Uhuru Kenyatta has his wing of brigades,
Yes.
and Raila Odinga has his side of supporters and other leaders in his bandwagon.
Yeah.
And now that the two leaders have so chosen to work together, with or without skepticism from any quarter, the country has now had no option but to go alongside them. And this has forced leaders who perhaps had very difficult, ways of accepting. He has so chosen to, work alongside the two leaders for the best interest of this country and for the welfare of every person.
All right.
And, the divisive politics that we have always experienced after every electoral cycle, after every 5 years, you'd see investors wanting to get out of this country. They'd want to cut back on expenditures. They would want to reduce the magnitude of their businesses. So what the two leaders are saying,
right,
that why can't we address the fundamentals? Because we don't just fight because we want Raila Odinga to become president. No, that is not the issue. The issue is, how do we handle our electoral merchandise,
right,
to the respect that whoever wins,
yes,
will be pronounced as so.
All right.
It will then give an opportunity to a Turkana, a Tugen, and anyone else
to be able to
lead this country.
All right.
The votes will ultimately count.
So now the question that Kenyans have been asking, a lot of them this month, is that they haven't seen much movement in terms of that building bridges initiative. From where you see, do you think it's making progress as fast as you would want it to move?
Well, it's almost 1 year since the handshake, and there are no visible signs of any outcomes of the building bridges initiatives. And I've seen 1 or 2 meetings covered live by the media, but outside that, I've not seen any work. But when you look at the two principles, it seems that we've made progress. And the question which we must ask ourselves times above number is, are there selfish interests consistent with our public interest and national interest? Mm-hmm. That still remains the question. And this handshake between President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga will be useless if it does not translate to very solid institutions. Because as a nation, we are not going to be playing to the pleasure of these two personalities. Right. That when they are happy, when they call themselves brothers, the nation is at peace, the economy starts growing. And when they consider themselves to be enemies, we start bleeding. So President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga have got a fundamental duty to ensure that the handshake of friendship translates to very strong institutions. And the key one that both parties are not talking about is IBC. Because the reason we get into a crisis after every election is, for some reason, the people employed at IBC do not know how to count votes. So when they pronounce one candidate a winner, we don't believe it. When they pronounce another candidate,
so you don't think that
it
has been dealt with by the handshake?
Well, the rot is at IBC. I've not seen that there is proactive measures. It's the same situation obtaining today in DRC. You hear that a fellow who was number 3 is now going to become the president of that nation. So Martin Fayulu, who says that he actually won, is now left in the wilderness all alone. We want President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga to clean up IBC. That when IBC declares Honorable Jared Okello as the winner in Nyando, the guy is given a beating, goes home knowing this was free, fair, and credible. But right now, when IBC pronounces a winner, actually our IBC in Kenya, as far as the presidential election is concerned, is no different from the one in DRC. So we just need to sanitize that place, clean it, ensure that the fountain of democracy in Kenya, which is IBC, is cleaned up.
All right, let's take a quick commercial break here on Sunday edition. When we come back, we'll be taking a quick detour from politics and have a post-mortem of the attack on 14 Riverside Drive, how the government and security agencies responded to that terror